Okay, so hi everybody. I hope you are enjoying your day. We will spend the next 25 minutes together. And this is the title of my talk. DX is the new black, learning from using Nuxt and Storybook at scale. So what's behind all these buzzwords? Right, we are about to talk about developer experience, which means what can you do to make your developer happy and to make them love working every day on your project. So first, who am I? I think I've been a bit spoiled with this presentation, but I'm a JavaScript freelance. I'm coming from Paris. I started my journey with coding in Angular with version 1, if some people remember that, up to version 6, I think, something like that. Then I switched to Vue, still doing some Angular sometime. And it happens that I write some code of React also. So I'm loving everybody, and what I will talk to you today can be used to any frameworks. And also, it's true, I'm a Magic the Gathering addict. Why I'm telling you that? Well, I will be using magic cards as illustration on my talk. If you don't know what is Magic the Gathering, just enjoy the beautiful picture and take a look tonight, like as soon as possible, because I think this is the best game in the world. And also a very great community and a lot of job opportunities. Yeah, a lot of developers there. So, a bit of context. It was like 1 year ago, early in 2019. I have my commercial calling me and say, hey, you know what? There is this big luxury brand, I cannot give you the name, sorry, which is going to rebuild all its front end from scratch. Are you in? And I say, yes, why not? I love challenge. So yes, big company, new stack, you see what's going on. So what was the things we need? So yeah, better performance. This is, I think, what everybody wants when you are rebuilding your platform. We also want an easy deployment, because right now they were using a big monolithic Java stuff, which take hours to go to production, which is a nightmare for everybody. And also, we already have a team there, and we want to be sure that everybody will be able to learn the new stack, and because we don't want to fire anybody, you know. And spoiler, it was in the title. We decided to go to the JavaScript world, and we choose Vue as a framework because of the learning curve. And we also go to Nuxt for all the server-side rendering and for SEO and performance reasons. So I was starting this project. We know what we want to do for the technology. And I was just remembering one of my projects 2 or 3 years ago when everything go wrong. Like, I was the team which inherits the big refactoring project. Like you see, everybody was doing the cool stuff, and 2 years after, you have the team who get it. And nothing was working. It was a nightmare. All they want was pushing feature. But hey, any developer who came here, they were not able to start the project in their local machine. Saying, just stop. We need to do that before. And I say, OK, this time I have the opportunity to do things well. And what I want to do with this project is to put developer first, which not means low quality on production. And I really want to focus on the developer experience. So we start thinking about it. I was alone for 1 month. All the other dev was working on redesigning in the legacy platform. And this is all the things we think about to put in place. So documentation, dev tools like template generator, marks, how to do things without API running, unit test, design system, CI/CD, lot of stuff. But today I only have 25 minutes, 20 now, to talk to you. So I want to focus on one of the tools we used, which can cover some of these use cases. And yes, spoiler again, it was in the title. We will talk about Storybook. So who here knows Storybook? A bunch of you. Sorry, maybe one slide will be bothering you. So what is Storybook? Storybook is a framework which is built for projects who have a component-first approach, which is basically all the modern web development nowadays. And basically, it's just, here you see the Storybook of Storybook, Inception. You basically have just an UI displaying all the components available. And you can see in a preview what the components are looking like in different cases. So you write what they call story, and story is just a use case of your component in a certain context. That's all. But why it's cool? First, it's a living documentation. Storybook build is running using your source code. So every time you change your component, everything is up to date on Storybook. And you know, developers are a bit lazy. If you have documentation which is not linked to the code, this will never be updated. So this is a cool feature. Also, it enables us to work with what I call visually driven development. It's looking like test-driven development, which is each time we create a component, we create the story on Storybook, we display the Storybook, we display all our use cases, we go through our code, and we can immediately see if the component is behaving the way we want. And we don't have to wait the backend, we don't have to wait to have the full pages. We can just sandbox and see if everything is working, especially in some edge cases. But what is Storybook technically? Technically, it's a web app in React, which is running what they call a preview, which is basically just an iframe, which can run whatever code you want, Angular, Vue, React, web component, everything which is running in the browser. And then they just provide you a channel which lets you discuss between these two things. If I change my story, I display another component on my preview. Basically, that's all. And this is what a stories file looks like. So every time I write a component, I write a file like that, which is just describing what I want to tell about this component. So I have a first export, which is the default one, which is just defining some metadata to my stories file. So the most important here is the title one. This will be like a unique ID, and this will be also used for the folder structure on the left. And after that, every time you write an export, this will be a use case of your component. And a story is just a function which is returning a component. So here, it's a Vue component. And if you know how to write Vue, which basically you know because we are in a Vue project, it's very easy to write, and you are just explaining how to use your component. But hey, we are in a JavaScript world, and so everybody wants to enhance everything. So you have a lot of add-ons to make your experience on Storybook better. So you have the one which are the official one, There is a lot of them. And there is two we really use a lot. It's the knobs and the documentation one, because, yes, writing documentation is cool. So this is our storybook, the real one, just changing the name to be sure nobody knows what's going on here. And let me just do that. So this is our modal component, which is a basic piece of UI in our website. Knobs, it's the little panel you see here. And it's, maybe I will just go up again. And it's just putting you some UX to change dynamically parameters. This is just that. So you can have some text, and if I change that, it will update on my component use cases. I can change the type of model, seeing if it's doing whatever I want it to do, depending on the parameters. So it's just a way for us to play with the parameters. At first, we use it a lot, maybe too much. Right now, we try to use it only for testing things we need to change dynamically, like if we have some animation or stuff like that, or if you have too many parameters and it's too long to describe all the different combinations you can have of the different parameters. So that one is easy, and the other one, it's the small tab up here, which lets you have a proper documentation of your components, some description. You have this very useful table, which is describing all the props, slots, events of your components. And I didn't write it. It's automatic. It's reading my source code, and up, it's here. So this tabs, I have it for free. I write nothing, and it's up running, and my component is documented. I can also go further, and I can just write full documentation like this, which is like sort of design system on our projects. And it's just using a special format, which is MDX, which is Markdown with JS6 inside. So you just write Markdown, and between different pieces of your Markdown, you can put some JavaScript here, which lets you render whatever you want. OK, so that's cool. But remember, we are a Nuxt project. Nuxt is doing a lot of things for you. It's taking care of the build, injecting some plugin, initialize your router, your store, lot of stuff. And Storybook, even if it's using your source code, it's only using the component parts. And it's a totally different project. It's living in its own place. So we need to bring some Nuxt logic inside our Storybook, because some of our components, they need this context to exist and work properly. Also, we can have some business logic. For example, some of our components did not exist outside of a context. I always have a connected user. I always have a current local. So I need to bring that to Storybook also. And you know what? Customized Storybook is very easy to do. So why not doing it? So first things you can do is write what we call decorator. Decorator is just a component which will wrap your story. So it's a component which is wrapping a component. I think some React developer loves this pattern. It's running inside the preview, so it's just using basically the same framework you are using on your project. And you can define them locally, only for some stories, or globally. What are the use cases for that? Well, it can be as simple as just some style, like I want my stories to always be centered, adding some margin. Or it can be a very complex one, when you just inject context and all your logic and like I order component and stuff like that. This is how a very small one looks like. We have accessibility criteria on our projects, and we have some CSS class added when you keyboard, you touch some keyboard to be sure you have a nice outline when you navigate using keyboard. And all of this logic, it's inside what we call the layout in Nuxt. So it's a global context Nuxt provides us. And I don't have that on Storybook. So I will just write a decorator, which basically will wrap in the same way that I'm doing it in my layout. And so now, inside my story, I will be able to test my keyboard navigation. You can also write very more complex one. Sorry, a lot of codes going on. Here, I'm just using a helper function from Storybook, which is this make decorators thing, which is just taking some parameters and a function, which is also returning a component. But here, I have access to more parameters, which let me customize these stories by story. I will just use it the same way as before with the add decorator function. And after that, in each of my story, I will be able to add some metadata and just define some parameters. And this will work together. So here we have an example when we mount and unmount Vuex module at demand. You also have other things pretty cool, which they call tools. So tools is just React component because it's running in the main application. It's a piece of UI. It's running in a specific slot, which is like the top banner in the application. And you have a lot of components and hooks available from Storybook to be sure that your component is looking like the rest of the application. So, how it's looking like. This is our example. Let me quickly show you what's going on. Here, for example, this is all of this here. It's something we customize on our projects. So we have a small button to quickly test if everything is right in a right-to-left version. We also have a definition of all our breakpoints to be sure that our components are responsive. And we have a bunch of context tooling over there, which is just changing the local, the user, the page context, and stuff like that. So how do you write that? Sure. So first, you write a React component. So you can, as I said, import some stuff from Storybook. You have access to some CSS if you want. And I'm just returning here a basic button. When I click on it, I toggle a state, and I'm going from left to right or right to left. And I'm displaying that state. That's all. This state, I'm using a special hook. This will be stored in the main application. So if my little piece of UI disappear because I'm going in another tabs or stuff like that, I will just save the state. And I have access with this hook to the channel. You remember, it's the one who lets you discuss between your main application and your preview. And each time I'm changing the value, I will emit on this channel an event. Then I will just register this add-on. I will say, hey, use this React component. This will be your tools. Thank you. And inside my preview code, I can just listen to this event and do whatever I need to do with my own application logic. So here we are committing this state on our store, and we are updating the attribute on the DOM so that our CSS is working. So really, possibilities are infinite. You have access to different pieces of the app, like tab, panels, even some stuff who are just adding logic without any UX. As usual, there is a big community behind, so a lot of people love to write some add-ons. So for your use case, you can have it. And there is a very rich API to do it. I've seen examples of people running unit tests on Storybook, for example, or displaying their design side by side with the code. Like this kind of stuff, everything is possible. But yeah, we also have some challenges, because this is happening, right? So first, as said before, Storybook is a completely separate application. So every time I do a modification on the build of my Nuxt application, I need to duplicate that on my Storybook application. And I don't like that. So if somebody here are very good to write Nuxt plugin, I think we can do something about that, like a Storybook Nuxt plugin. I think there is some people in the audience who can do that. No? Okay. Other things which are a bit hard for us was the Nuxt pages. So Nuxt pages are really special components in a Nuxt project. They have a very specific life cycle, and they are depending on some component from Nuxt. And right now, we are not able to render them on Storybook. So even if Storybook means to only display some small components, sometimes you want to see what's going on when you put everything together. And right now, we are not able to do that. And also, we had some problem with third parties, like our video player or our maps connector, because they don't love to be anywhere else than the main application. But we are working on it. But hey, there is also a lot of things very cool with that. So as I said, it's a big company. So a lot of process, a lot of people. Our team, it's like, I don't know, 5 or 6 front-end developers, 3 back-end, 3 or 4 people just writing user stories, 2 people testing, a lot of things going on. And this is just one team. We have other teams working also on the project. And so I'd say, hey, we will use Storybook. And it had a huge impact on the process, because it's forcing everybody to just think about what a component is. So normally, all developers are starting to do that, but it's not the case for the testing team, for example, or the business owner. And then you have a tool to visually display them and test them. So right now in our process, when we have a page, we cut it on several components, and we write user story on Jira. Yes, Jira, sorry. Yeah, I don't like it. It's neither. And we have special process for that, like faster process. We develop it, we specify it, and then people can test it very independently. And that's very, very cool. And I love that because it involves everyone. Everyone is working around this Storybook stuff. And it's very easy with that to have feedback very earlier in the process. So, for example, we are, I don't know, making a product card. And you develop your components inside Storybook using mocks. So you need to think about the data you will need. What are the type of the product? What are all the accessibility key you will need? And you can just go to the API developer and say, hey, I take a look at your endpoints and I'm missing that, that, and that. Can you just add it? And everything is done in parallel. It's also cool to interact with the UX team because we have a dedicated team just working on the design. And if very early you take, hey, this is your slider, this is what's going on when you animate it, I think it's not that beautiful, can we work on it? And you do that very early and you are not waiting the full page to do that. And that's very cool. So, conclusion. I think, and I think I'm right, that this project is going very well. We are putting things in production very often and with in a very successful way. The team is happy working on it, which is something I really love. We have on board a lot of people on this, and this has been easy. And I think it's due to Storybook, but also all the effort we put to the developer experience on our projects. And I just want to send some words to the teams, which maybe is watching me. I love you guys. It's amazing to work with you every day. And that's the end. If you want more information, you can find me on Twitter. I will be really happy to talk with you about Storybook and all the dev tools we have on our project. Thank you all.